Well, COGTA Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa will today hold dialogue with political parties on the review of the white paper on local government in Midrand, Johannesburg. The meeting will also look at local government restructuring and takes place ahead of the 2026 local government elections. Well, our SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko is there covering the story for us. Let's see what he's got for us. Samkele, good morning to you.
Indeed, Leanne, the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs with the entire ministry, including the Deputy Minister, Dr. Dixon Masamula, will be going through the white paper on the restructuring of local government. One of the key features of this particular discussion with political parties that will be directed by Professor Somadoda Figeni will be around the funding model of municipalities across the country. As you look at the current method that is there of 90% revenue generated through rates, and 10% through assistance of government, that is not particularly working at this point in time, as many municipalities are not able to generate that much needed revenue. You look at the various potholes that are across the municipalities, the lack of service delivery that is there, and decaying infrastructure within municipalities. Dr. Masamula, just the essence of the funding model and this white paper, what can South Africans anticipate from this discussion that will take place with political parties today?
Well, we are here in this important historic meeting that never took place in the context of local government's discussions on policy related matters and probable legislation thereof. We'll be engaging these parties precisely on the review process on the white paper, because it is important that we reset the system for yet another 30 years to 40 years of these policies horizon. But most importantly, it's for us to appreciate the fact that the assumptions which were made in 1998 to date, 30 years into democracy and the establishment of this system, there are experiences that we have been able to earn throughout the process. And of course, some of those assumptions, we should be able to revisit them. And one of the key matters around the whole equation is how do we reposition municipalities financially from a fiscal point of view, mindful of the fact that they do have got a fiscal capacity to determine their own revenue with regard to rates and taxes, and as well as the trading of municipal services. Section 214 of the country's constitution says it is important that all the three spheres of government ought to share the nationally collected revenue equitably, which means therefore that there is a need, unavoidably so, as the President has already instructed us, that we must review the funding model of local government, precisely because the assumption which was made in 1998 says or gave a split of a 90% revenue collection for municipalities to fund their own infrastructure development, implementation of their integrated development plans. And therefore, both national and provincial grant funding put together, they account for the 10%. Now, fast forward, given the socio-economic difficulties and challenges that our people are facing, and of course the underperformance of our national economy, to a larger extent as well, has affected the capacity of those assumptions that the revenue streams will come from the municipalities right up to 90% of their own funding. So all these matters have necessitated this important engagement of a dialogue which today will be convening with political parties, precisely because these parties are the ones who are running government at municipal level, they're then provinces and as well as national. We'll be looking at the aggregation of our experiences on how, as we endeavor working together with National Treasury on the review of this funding model, what are the actual pointers and the extent to which we can live up to the constitutional dictates on the equitable distribution of this funding. So we're looking forward to a situation where, as we conclude this process before the next elections, municipalities will have been properly positioned with regard to proper funding mechanisms, looking at all options of financial streams.
What are some of the proposals, particularly around the funding models, that are coming to the fore on these various municipalities? You've been in this Kukune District municipality, worked extensively there. You've been in charge of Limpopo as well in your previous tenure as an MEC. What are some of the key proposals that are coming to the fore to fund these municipalities, looking at the dwindling revenue generation that is there within municipalities, particularly your rural municipalities and your metros at this point in time that have got decaying infrastructure?
I think what is very essential that is beginning to emerge from the process of consultations, in as much as at our level working together with National Treasury and SALGA, there is a technical team that has been put in place to start to look at this matter very seriously and very closely. And of course, that team hasn't as yet brought to our attention some elements of what could go into that. But from these broad consultations on the white paper process, many stakeholders, including even political parties and communities, are saying to us that the criteria and the baseline that we use to give them money is just not correct. Okay, it says they're saying it's not correct because it was based on an assumption of 1998. 30 years into democracy, that assumption can't work. And just to give you a very simple example, in one province where we have been, mayors and communities were saying, Mr. Masemola, Dr. Masemola, we are being given 20 million rands MIG grant funding for 12 months as a municipality. Yet the needs and the problems of our area are abounds. How do you expect us to live up to the expectations of these communities just based on this little amount of money? But from a scientific point of view, in terms of the criteria as agreed upon, the baseline is on the population, which of course made them to qualify for that. But in reality, that money is just very insufficient. And therefore, these are practical problems that are emerging. One of the key issues is, for instance, in one of the metros that have been designated as a metro, but with a huge rural component, that metro has lost some of the funding streams like the MIG to fund rural development areas. And therefore, these metro says to us, we must be looked at very differently because we're a metro characterized by some portions of rural features. And the funding streams that we get has stopped that other aspects of MIG funding. So your review of the funding will have to look at this situation in totality so that we can be able to make sure that the integrated development plans and the expectations of our people throughout the country, including even how we reposition institutionally the capacity, the professionalization, but the extent to which we strengthen the financial management, project management and other related matters should become the function of better funding model of local government.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Dickson Masemola. We are definitely going to schedule a more lengthier interview with you on the funding models of local government, as Sakina and Leanne are there in my ear shouting that time is up. But it will certainly be interesting on the engagement of political parties on the funding model. One of those municipalities the Deputy Minister was speaking about that comes to mind is eThekwini Metro Municipality, which has a large component of rural parts of that particular municipality which need much infrastructure, bulk infrastructure, to be built within those areas of the municipality, where it's also trying to introduce some sort of rates and taxes to be paid by those particular communities that have built mansions in and around the rural parts of eThekwini Metro Municipality.
All right, Samkele, thank you very, very much for that.